Hare Krishna. Good morning, dear participants of the marathon. Thank you for your participation in this important event, which is designed for the good of all people, for the elevation of consciousness of all people. And elevating the consciousness will, of course, influence our environment, because we are all intercommunicated, we are all interrelated, and therefore we help all living entities on earth to overcome these hardships in our time. And today we will read from Caitanya-caritamrita, Antya Lila. Antya means conclusion, conclusive pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And today we will read from the 8th chapter. So let's chant auspicious mantras. So please repeat after me. These are the prayers which attract the mercy of the Lord, which will bless us on this reading, so that our reading would be really full of His presence. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. А как у нас перевод идет? Можно уточнить. Он синхронно идет, да? Уже перевод идет? Перевод будет синхронный, да, вы будете слышать. Ага, все, отлично. Да, он уже есть. Итак, мы начинаем с 7-го текста. So we will start from the 7th verse. Я буду читать на бенгале, как I will read in Bengali and then translation, and then I will comment something. We will start from the 7th verse. Историю, которая здесь описана. Хена кали Рамачандра Пури Госани Айла Парамананда Пури Ре Ара Прабхуре Милила. Однажды в Джаганатха-пури пришел саньяси по имени Рамачандра. Then a sannyasi named Ramachandra Puri Goswami came to see Paramananda Puri in Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Jagannath-puri is a town on the shore of the Bengali of the Indian Ocean. This is one of the very famous places of pilgrimage in India. In June and July, there is a huge festival in Jagannath-puri where millions of people come, and there is a very famous temple. It is said that the worshipping of the deities which are in the temple, the worshipping to the expansion of Krishna in the form of Balarama and his sister Subhadra, it is going for 340,000 millions of years. The temple was rebuilt several times, but the tradition of worshipping is going on. And also they said that Jagannath means the Lord of the universe, the one who takes care of the whole universe. And Jagannath-puri is especially famous for the last pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who actually spent there half of his life. And there were so many pastimes of his. And this is the story about how a sannyasi suddenly came to Jagannath-puri. Sannyasi means a monk, a person who is in a detached way of life. And so Ramachandra-puri came to see Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and also one of his associates named Paramananda-puri. Paramananda-puri Kaila Charana Vandana Puri Gosani Kaila Tandra Dritha Alingana. Paramananda-puri offered respects at the feet of Ramachandra-puri, and Ramachandra-puri strongly embraced him.
The purport. Because Ramananda Puri was a disciple of Madhavendra Puri, both Paramananda Puri and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu offered him respectful obeisances.
Mahaprabhu Kaila Tandri Dandavatanathi Alingana-caritamrita Kaila Krishna Smriti.
Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also offered obeisances unto Ramachandra Puri, who then embraced him and thus remembered Krishna. And the purport. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu offered obeisances to Ramachandra Puri in consideration of his being a disciple of Srila Madhavendra Puri, the spiritual master of his own spiritual master, Ishvara Puri. So the Lord Chaitanya, although he is the Supreme Lord and he is Adi Guru of everyone, he is the spiritual master of everyone who is leading us from inside, from our heart, and gives us a consciousness. And also from outside, he comes as a spiritual master to help us to hear our own heart and to learn how to hear our own heart, to learn to develop our spiritual intuition and to understand which right steps I have to make in my spiritual progress, so that I wouldn't speculate, but I could ask living Guru, the representation of the original Guru. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is showing an example for us, and he also accepted spiritual master, and his spiritual master was Ishvara Puri. And Ishvara Puri had a spiritual master, Madhavendra Puri. And Ramachandra Puri was also a disciple of Madhavendra Puri, and therefore Chaitanya Mahaprabhu paid him obeisances because he is actually was on the level of his spiritual master. Usually, spiritual brothers, disciples of one guru, are worshipped equally. So when one sannyasi devotee meets another sannyasi devotee, one monk meets another monk, they both remember Krishna. Even sannyasi Mayavadi, even Mayavadi sannyasi generally remember Narayana, who Mayavadi is a deviation from the right philosophy, who is also Krishna by saying Om Namo Bhagavate Narayanaya, Om Namo Narayanaya. Thus, it is the duty of a sannyasi to remember Krishna. According to Smriti Shastra, a sannyasi does not offer obeisances or blessings to anyone. It is said, sannyasi nirashir nirmas kriyah. A sannyasi should not offer anyone blessings or obeisances. Sannyasi usually he has to be really detached and renounced. But there are different categories of sannyasi, and later we will talk about it. The three of them talked about Krishna for some time, and then Jagadananda came and extended an invitation to Ramananda Puri. Jagadananda was also one of the associates of Lord Chaitanya, and he invited Ramachandra Puri to his own house. A large quantity of the remnants of food from Lord Jagannatha was brought in for distribution. Ramachandra Puri ate sumptuously, and then he wanted to find faults in Jagadananda Pandita. It's very interesting behavior. Just imagine, you invited a person to lunch, and he ate sumptuously, and then think, so I need to criticize this host to find some faults in him. That was the inclination of Ramachandra Puri. He was an offender. He had this very bad quality which need to be removed on the spiritual path. So Ramachandra Puri, he's an example of wrong behavior and a wrong disciple who tries to follow the spiritual path, and at the same time he destroys his own devotion by offense. So let's see how he became like that. So after, so this remnants of the Lord Chaitanya, what does it mean? Each day, every day, there are many dishes are prepared for Jagannatha, for Lord Jagannatha. 64 preparations are made for him every day, and he's famous for this food which is sanctified in this temple. And there is a biggest kitchen in this temple. There are 300, 400, more than 400 sections of this kitchen. Sometimes there are less people, sometimes there are more people, but and many families are cooking there. But if all the sections will work, then 10 millions of people can be fed. And inside of each stove, there is a stove in each section of this kitchen, and clay pots are put on the stoves, and also all the stoves are put one over another. And there are other sections of the stove which are also and also clay pots are put on these different sections of the stove, and then the fire is ignited, and another one of the priests is praying and asking Lakshmi to help to make this lunch, and all the cooks, they meditate that they only help Lakshmi to feed the Lord. And then all these pots are brought into the temple, they are offered to the deity, and the Lord sanctifies all these dishes by his glance. And he accepts this food by his glance. And after that it becomes Mahaprasadam, or great mercy, which is distributed among devotees. And some part of this Mahaprasadam, Jagannatha got this part, and he fed Mahaprasadam to Ramachandra Puri, and after that he decided to criticize. After finishing the meal, Ramachandra Puri requested, "My dear Jagadananda, please listen. You eat the food that is left." With great eagerness, Ramachandra Puri seated Jagadananda Pandita and personally served him prasadam. Encouraging him again and again, Ramachandra Puri fed him sumptuously, but when Jagadananda had washed his hands and mouth, Ramachandra Puri began criticizing him. Just imagine this picture. Jagadananda is eating, he actually is full, but Ramachandra Puri tells him that you shouldn't refuse Mahaprasadam, you don't need to eat everything. And he put him more and more and more. It was difficult to refuse him because it was a senior and a respected devotee. And Jagadananda was eating. And after that, he started to wash his hands. Of course, he overate. And then Ramachandra Puri started to criticize. "I have heard," he said, "that the followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu eat more than necessary. Now I have directly seen that this is true." And poor Jagadananda was amazed by these words. He couldn't understand what's happening. This person was smiling and asking me to eat more, but now he criticizing me. Feeding a sannyasi too much breaks his regulative principles, for when a sannyasi eats too much, his renunciation is destroyed. Jagannatha Pandit was also a renounced person. He was also a sannyasi. Therefore, Ramachandra Puri, he notes that if a sannyasi is attached to food too much, of course he eats, but he should eat just a minimum for supporting his body and not to enjoy himself with food. Because if a person overeats, then he becomes, then it's very difficult to control his senses, and he becomes weak and lusty, lust awakened in such person. And Ramachandra Puri says that if you overeat, then you break regulative principles and you will lose your renunciation. You won't be able to follow the path of renunciation. The characteristic of Ramachandra Puri was that first he would induce someone to eat more than necessary, and then he would criticize him. Formerly, when Madhavendra Puri was at the last stage of his life, Ramachandra Puri came to where he was staying. And this is the story told how Ramachandra Puri became such an offender. Actually, he was like a maniac. He was enjoying to criticize devotees and to humiliate them. At first, he induced them to overeat, and then he criticized them. It was his enjoyment. He liked that he is higher than them. And how he became like that is told in this story. Madhavendra Puri was his spiritual master, and when he was actually dying, Ramachandra Puri came to see him. And what he saw, Madhavendra Puri was chanting the holy name of Krishna, and sometimes he would cry, "Oh my Lord, I did not get shelter at Mathura." Mathura is a spiritual abode of the Lord, and his highest abode, where Madhavendra Puri he wanted to reach this highest abode, and he was chanting holy names. He was meditating on that abode. Actually, he was already there. He was the greatest devotee, but devotee never thinks that he achieved something. He wants to achieve, and we can see that if his desire is really big, then it means that devotee actually he already attracted his this abode to his heart, and this abode is already manifested in his heart. And Madhavendra Puri was crying in this mood of separation with the Lord, and the mood of separation it is said to be the highest manifestation of love to Lord. Then Ramachandra Puri, he saw his spiritual master crying, and he thought that his spiritual master didn't reach anything. He was a foolish disciple who didn't understand such a he didn't understand these very exalted feelings of separation, of devotion. So Ramachandra Puri was so foolish that he fearlessly dared to instruct his spiritual master. "If you are in full transcendental bliss," he said, "you should now remember only Brahman. Why are you crying?" Ramachandra Puri, he was sure that his spiritual master is on a stage of perfection, because everyone knew that and everyone worshipped him as the highest personality who achieved the highest transcendental level. And on that level, of course, a person is in transcendental bliss. But if Ramachandra Puri thought that this transcendental bliss is the level of Brahman, of impersonal state, which is just the beginning of spiritual bliss. There is some happiness on this level, but this is not the level of true transcendental bliss. Just seeing the transcendental light of the Lord, it brings a feeling of freedom to a person, also a bliss of freedom. But this bliss cannot be compared with the bliss of relationship with the Lord. And Madhavendra Puri was on the level of loving relationship of the Lord. And there are meetings and separations with the Lord. Sometimes devotee meets the Lord and he is overwhelmed with the happiness of this meeting, and then when there is separation, devotee feels empty and he cries because of this separation. And both states are connection between the devotee and the Lord. And it is described in scriptures that love of God is like a river, a big river which flows through the heart of the devotee. And there are two shores of this river. One shore is meeting, another shore is separation. And this state of separation makes the love much stronger, and it makes a person intensifies the desire of the devotee to see the Lord. So Madhavendra Puri, he was on this state of separation with the Lord. He was always meditating and he was always connected with the Lord. On this highest level of transcendental love and bliss. Although externally it looked like crying because of one's fault, it's just an external state, but inside the devotee, he feels the highest transcendental feelings toward the Lord. And separation, it is considered even more intense than meeting. When a person feels this separation, all his feelings, they go inside into the heart. And this desire to meet the Lord becomes much stronger. But his foolish disciple, Ramachandra Puri, he was impersonalist, he didn't understand these transcendental feelings, and he thought that this is something wrong. Ramachandra Puri thought that these material feelings are just illusion, this is Maya, which a person must overcome, and to reach this state of a balance of all feelings. But actually this is just a beginning, this is just a first step. Really, actually, the person must reach the highest stage of feelings, and Madhavendra Puri was on that highest transcendental level. Ramachandra Puri, he didn't understand it, therefore he started to make this instruction. If you are in full transcendental bliss, he said, you should now remember only Brahman. Why are you crying? About the Brahman, only Brahman, meaning this effulgence. So why are you crying if you are already on that level? And in the purport it is said that, as stated in the Bhagavatamrita, Brahma Bhuta Prasanatmaya, Brahman realized person is always happy. Nashochtina Kankshati, he neither laments nor aspires for anything. Not knowing why Madhavendra Puri was crying, Ramachandra Puri tried to become his advisor. Thus, he committed a great offense, for disciples should never try to instruct his spiritual master. This is the etiquette. If a disciple corrects his spiritual master, it means that he puts himself higher than the spiritual master. And this is the breakage of the rule, and also disrespect to the spiritual master. A disciple must always feel himself lower and junior to the spiritual master. And this desire to be more elevated leads to criticizing even his own spiritual master, and such disciple is unable to progress on spiritual path. And usually spiritual master doesn't give initiation to such disciple until he would be in a right position of real surrender, of really humiliation. As it is said in Bhagavad Gita, in the relationship of spiritual master, a disciple must manifest pranipatana, which means he must bow at his spiritual master. It means that he is ready to accept that the spiritual master is senior, and then spiritual master, he will be able to give something to his disciple, because until the disciple doesn't have such a state of mind, it's impossible to give something to that person. This is the same as the water flows from the up to from the high to the low, and this is the same way the spiritual knowledge flows from spiritual master who is on the higher state, and then to the disciple who is on the lower state, on the subordinate state. So disciple asks this spiritual master, and then master he transmits this transcendental flow to his disciple. If a disciple challenges spiritual master, then the true knowledge wouldn't manifest in his heart. And therefore it is said that the first level of knowledge is humility. And if a disciple is on this level, then he will be able to accept this spiritual knowledge, and all the transcendental qualities will be manifested in him. If he has no humility, then he won't be able to get blessings from the spiritual master. And so Ramachandra Puri, he was a proud disciple, and therefore he even started to correct his spiritual master. Here in this instruction, Madhavendra Puri, greatly angry, rebuked him by saying, "Get out, you sinful rascal." The purport. Ramachandra Puri couldn't understand that his spiritual master, Madhavendra Puri, was feeling transcendental separation. His lamentation was not material, rather it proceeded from the highest stage of ecstatic love of Krishna. When he was crying in separation, "I couldn't achieve Krishna, I couldn't reach Madhura," this was not ordinary material lamentation. Ramachandra Puri was not sufficiently expert to understand the feelings of Madhavendra Puri, but nevertheless he thought himself very advanced. Therefore, regarding Madhavendra Puri's expressions as ordinary material lamentation, he advised him to remember Brahman, because he was latently an impersonalist. So a person which he tries to stay clear of all emotions. Madhavendra Puri understood Ramachandra Puri's position as a great fool and therefore immediately rebuked him. Such a reprimand from the spiritual master is certainly for the betterment of the disciple. Actually, Madhavendra Puri felt compassion to his disciple, and he rebuked him to awaken his heart, to awaken at least some humility in his disciple, and therefore he started to reprimand him. And even he started to send him away as a fool. In other words, a spiritual master, he never manifests uncontrolled anger. For example, if this fool is instructing me and I'm angry and therefore I'm sending his away, no. A spiritual master, especially who's on transcendental level, such as Madhavendra Puri, he manifests an anger, but this anger is controlled anger, just to help him to get rid of the ignorance from his heart. Therefore, Madhavendra Puri is reprimanding him and telling him to get out. But that disciple, unfortunately, didn't understand anything and didn't help him. It was his last chance. And here I would like to stop here a little bit on the topic of a disciple and the teacher. This is a very important thing. Without understanding it, it's impossible to progress in spiritual life. Until a person becomes a disciple inside, and disciple is the one who gets into different situations in life. He is not involved in this situation. And he doesn't try to make everything comfortable for himself. For example, if somebody is disturbing us, and usually we try to make ourselves comfortable and we are trying to remove this person from our life. But this is not a position of a disciple. This is a position of a person who thinks himself a knower. But a disciple, if something happens, he naturally thinks, why is it happening with me now? Why the words of this person invokes some anger in me? What's the lesson for me? Why is the Lord brought this situation into my life, and what should I learn from this situation, and what should I do? So a disciple is able to separate himself and his feelings and from his mind, which can fool him. The mind of a person works in this duality, what I like, what I don't like, good and bad. And when I see something which I don't like and I think this is bad, then I want to correct this, to make as I like, or to get rid of it. And people are always in this duality, and therefore they're always always avoiding this real life. They're always living in this external reality because they perceive events only externally, and because they don't have real discipleship, and they don't see that all events of their life are meant to correct them, and they don't see the mercy of the Lord, who is teaching us by every situation in life to help us to progress and to get certain qualities. But people are always avoiding such situations by trying to influence these situations, or is running away from them, and therefore he doesn't accept this lesson, and therefore a person cannot progress. As usual, such people who are driven by pride, or who think that they are right and all other people are wrong, they also get some knowledge. They're actually searching for knowledge. They read many books, they learn some information. But this is not a real knowledge, because there is a pride in their hearts. When a person thinks himself educated, knowing, and new information just makes a person think himself more even proud, and he is unable to see the lessons of the universe, the lessons of the Lord, which the Lord sends him into his life. And so consequently he will be unable to see real teachers in his life who also exist in this world, and he won't miss such. He actually will meet false teachers who are also proud, who speak beautifully, and they think that, oh, I also want to become like him and I can take something from him. And he also tries to become great so that everyone would worship him. And this is the false way of knowledge, because in this way the person develops qualities of ignorance, and ignorance starts from the proud. And then he started to he wants glory, he wants to be worshipped, he wants to be glorified. And also he tries to humiliate other people by his words, to make them feel lower. So this is the character of a proud person. Whereas the person who is following the spiritual path, the first thing, what is important for him, that I must to become disciple in my heart, who doesn't trust his feelings and mind, but tries to get the revelation from the prayer, to understand what kind of lesson the Lord gives me now. What does the Lord want from me now? And this sincere disciple, he will also see true teachers who are also good disciples, and who can perceive the Lord and His lessons, and who have real qualities of a real devotee. And Madhavendra Puri was this real teacher. He was on the highest level of his development. But Ramachandra Puri, unfortunately, was a proud disciple, and therefore he was just estimating his teacher only externally. And therefore he said that instead of crying, you need to think about Brahman. And naturally, Madhavendra Puri, as a teacher, he started to try to he tried to reprimand him, and he tried to beat the ignorance out of his disciple. Oh my Lord Krishna, I could not reach you, nor could I reach you about Mathura. I am dying in my unhappiness, and now this rascal has come to give me more pain. Don't show your face to me. Go anywhere else you like. If I die seeing your face, I shall not achieve the destination of my life. I am dying without achieving the shelter of Krishna, and therefore I am greatly unhappy. Now this condemned foolish rascal has come to instruct me about Brahman. This way Madhavendra Puri denounced Ramachandra Puri. Due to his offense, gradually material desire appeared within him. In Ramachandra Puri, the word vasana, material desires, refers to dry speculative knowledge. Such speculative knowledge is only material. So material desires means inclination to enjoy dry philosophy, and dry philosophy means just information which nourishes the pride of a person, and therefore he wants to get more and more information to become great. And a person thinks that he progresses this way, but actually this is not a progress. This is a degradation, because the pride of the person is growing. And such speculative knowledge is only material. As confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam 10.14.4, a person without devotional service who simply wants to know things, kevala bodha labdhaye, gains only dry speculative knowledge, but no spiritual profit. And what is spiritual profit? It means that a person that the spiritual qualities of the soul are awakened in the person. In the 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, it is described these transcendental qualities of the soul. Amanitvam, this is a humility, then renunciation from the... Amanitvam means that a person searches lessons of the Lord in his life, and he tries to see his sanction, and he tries to understand the will of the Lord, because the Lord is always wishes good to all living entities and helps their development. So everything comes into my life. The disciple knows that this is just the Lord's mercy to help me to change something in myself. This is humility, an openness to this guiding of the Lord. So the person tries to understand the will of the Lord and to accept it. And if the person doesn't want any glories to himself, he doesn't try to be a benefactor to everyone. He denies all any positions. He doesn't want to be higher than others. Therefore, he never uses violence, because the violence only used by people who wants to become higher than others. But the true disciple avoids this, and if he doesn't want any glory for himself, then there is no inclination to violate others. And of course, other people may disturb such person, but if a person has a humility, he always thinks himself as an insignificant servant, and he can be tolerant. He can be patient, even if somebody causes them troubles. And a very bright example, this is an example of Jesus. He was really tolerant and patient in the highest extent. When he was crucified, he didn't accept it as an offense, but he was praying for that people. This is the highest level of tolerance. These are spiritual qualities. So such qualities can be only developed in a person who follows the path of real knowledge. But a false disciple, being on the platform of pride, he only gets an external knowledge, just information. But this doesn't manifest good qualities in him, because he doesn't want to change himself. He just wants to get information to become higher than others, better than others. This is what happened in the heart of Ramachandra Puri, and therefore he couldn't understand his spiritual master and made an offense, committed an offense.
Итак, далее здесь в комментарии говорится, что человек, который не занят преданным служением, а лишь стремится к накоплению знаний, обретает только сухое отвлеченное знание.
Even though one is liberated in this life, if one offends the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he falls down in the midst of material desires, of which dry speculation about spiritual realization is one.
Уже обрел освобождение в этой жизни, снова становится жертвой материальных желаний.
Even if one is liberated in this life, he becomes addicted to material desires because of offenses to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the next verse is, one who is attached to dry speculative knowledge has no relationship with Krishna. His occupation is criticizing Vaishnavas. Thus, he is situated in criticism. This is the result of a person who just follows the path of external getting knowledge, because this doesn't change his qualities. Therefore, such person is always unsatisfied inside, because he doesn't have a connection with the source of completeness in his heart. Even getting information, he feels unsatisfaction, and this unsatisfaction is revealed in his criticizing others, in his envy to others. These bad qualities naturally arise in his heart, and so his favorite activity become to criticize others. And happy people especially, they irritate him, because Vaishnavas are happy, they are satisfied, and therefore his inclination, he is inclined to offend such happy people, although actually he has to surrender to such people and to learn to be happy. But out of envy and this pride, this person starts to, on the contrary, he starts to offend those people who could really help him. And this is what happened to Ramachandra Puri. And the purport, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakura has explained in his Anubhashya that the word Nirbandha indicates that Ramachandra Puri had a steady desire to criticize others. Impersonalist Mayavadis who have no relationship with Krishna, who cannot take to devotional service and who simply engage in material arguments to understand Brahman, regard devotional service to Krishna as karmakanda or fruitive activities. According to them, devotional service to Krishna is but another means for attaining dharma, artha, karma and moksha. Dharma means when a person follows certain religious principles, rituals, to get piety, which allows him to be rich, and then he will be able to satisfy his desires to have these riches, and eventually, when a person is fully satisfied, he can easily turn to be liberated. Moksha means liberation. This is a preliminary perfection. But this is actually a secondary purpose. The highest purpose is devotional service to the Lord. Therefore, they criticize the devotees for engaging in material activities. Seeing that devotees are actively serving, they actively do something, this Mayavadis think that they must renounce from everything. Everything is illusion. We need to avoid material activities and we need to be liberated from everything. But devotees, they actively serve, they have some feelings, they cry for Krishna, and this is all illusion. They think that this is material, but devotional service is on a spiritual level, and this is the highest perfection. And such people, they don't understand it. They equals this to material activities. They think that devotional service is Maya and that Krishna or Vishnu is also Maya. Therefore, they are called Mayavadis, those who think that this is illusion. Such a mentality awakens in a person who is an offender to Krishna and his devotees. This is the result of offenses. They lead to such philosophy, the philosophy of a proud person. Ishvara Puri, the spiritual master of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, performed service to Madhavendra Puri, cleaning up his stool and urine with his own hand. In old age, when a person is lying on a deathbed, he needs help because he cannot do anything, his body is old, and so Ishvara Puri, being a very humble servant, he was taking care of his teacher. And Ishvara Puri was always chanting the holy name and pastimes of Lord Krishna for Madhavendra Puri to hear. In this way, he helped Madhavendra Puri remember the holy name and pastimes of Lord Krishna at the time of death. Pleased with Ishvara, this is the example of an ideal disciple who is always in this humble mood to his master. He serves him, helps him to At the same time, he was cleaning his stool and urine, and the same time he supported his mood by telling the pastimes of Krishna and chanting the holy name. He was helping Madhavendra Puri. Pleased with Ishvara Puri, Madhavendra Puri embraced him and gave him the benediction that he would be a great devotee and lover of Krishna. Thus, Ishvara Puri became like an ocean of ecstatic love for Krishna, whereas Ramachandra Puri became a dry speculator and a critic of everyone else. Ishvara Puri received the blessing of Madhavendra Puri, whereas Ramachandra Puri received the rebuke from him. Therefore, these two persons, Ishvara Puri and Ramachandra Puri, are examples of the objects of great personalities' benediction and punishment. Madhavendra Puri instructed the entire world by presenting these two examples. So these examples of Ramachandra Puri and Ishvara Puri is very instructive for all of us. It teaches us that what does it mean a real disciple and a false disciple. And today we just was talking about this topic, and this is a very important step on the spiritual path to understand what is the difference between the false disciple and the real disciple. And the sincere disciple is the one who wants to change his heart and to develop these qualities of humility, and therefore he is in a very humble position towards God and his representatives, and he is open to accept the lessons of Krishna. He tries to get this revelation and humbly prays to the Lord and also to his spiritual master, so that Krishna would be manifested in the spiritual master. So he is ready to serve him. As I started to speak about this verse from Bhagavad Gita, the first is Pranipatina, is devotee offers his obeisances to spiritual master. Then spiritual master, seeing this humility in his disciple, he wants to bless him, as we see in this example what Madhavendra Puri did, and he blesses him with everything he has. He thinks that this person is worth to get the most confident details of spiritual life, and therefore a devotee gets these transcendental qualities. And then he may have some questions. He has a different look, different view on life, and he asks questions to his spiritual master. This is the humbly to ask his spiritual master without challenging, understanding that the spiritual master has a perfect knowledge and that he is a real representative of Parampara. And disciple addresses his master and asks and addresses him all his doubts. How should I understand your instructions? You speak so and so, and how should I apply this? His disciple tries to understand this deeper and deeper, and all the doubts are dissipated. And the third quality of a disciple is a sevaya, is a readiness to serve his spiritual master. And these qualities are necessary for a disciple: humility and readiness to surrender. And the second is asking humble questions with the desire to understand spiritual science better. And the third thing is to serve spiritual master and to apply his instruction in one's life. Because this disciple doesn't apply these instructions, he wouldn't be able to get the experience.
Проникается тоже этим настроением ученичества и служения своего учителя, потому что учитель то же самое делает по отношению.
And the spiritual master does the same towards his own spiritual master and to Krishna. And this way, disciple, he develops the qualities of devotion. He becomes able to teach others in this way. This is how it's happened when a person, God, gets needed position for teaching others, and Ishvarapuri was a real disciple, and therefore he got a special blessing from Madhavendra Puri, and he became a spiritual teacher of the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, of the Lord Chaitanya. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he accepted him as spiritual master. It was a real. So Ramachandra Puri, it is described the story how Ramachandra Puri once came to Jagannath Puri. Let's read the verses. And thus, His Divine Grace Madhavendra Puri, the spiritual master of the entire world, thus distributed ecstatic love for Krishna. While passing away from the material world, he chanted the following verse: O my Lord, O most merciful Master, O Master of Madhura, when shall I see you again? Because of my not seeing you, my agitated heart has become unsteady. O most beloved one, what shall I do now? This is the very famous verse, how a great devotee describes they are said in the mood of closest servant of the Lord, the servant of his energy of enjoyment, Srimati Radharani. The Lord has two faces, a form of a man's form and a women's form. Man's form is Krishna, and woman's form, the form of his energy, Srimati Radharani. These are man's male and female aspects. And Srimati Radharani is the source of love, and Krishna is the one who accepts love. And there is always this loving exchange is taking place between them. This is the center of enjoyment, center of love. And being in this mood of service to this energy of enjoyment of the Lord, Madhavendra Puri also felt these feelings. And in this mood he was praying, and in this mood he passes away from this world. This is the highest state, to leave this world in such a mood. Then the person, he reaches the highest level of the spiritual world, and it's the highest spiritual abode. And so Madhavendra Puri passed away. In this verse, Madhavendra Puri teaches us to achieve ecstatic love for Krishna. By feeling separation from Krishna, one becomes spiritually situated. Madhavendra Puri sowed the seed of ecstatic love for Krishna within this material world and then departed. That seed later became a great tree in the form of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. How he sowed this seed? He brought this love of love and separation, which is felt by Srimati Radharani to Krishna. He also felt this love, and he passed this mood to Ishvarapuri, his disciple, and Ishvarapuri, he passed this mood to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Although the Lord Chaitanya, he doesn't need he doesn't need to get this, but this is the part of the plan of Lord Chaitanya. He had to accept the spiritual master and to accept this mood and to expand this knowledge in the form of this great tree. This is the tree of love. When different branches and leaves are different devotees, and this love is growing as the tree, and it is growing, and from one heart of a devotee it goes to another heart. So this tree is growing and further, and some people become big branches who can support many other small branches and leaves. Some becomes small branches, but all this tree of love which is personified by Lord Chaitanya, who supports all these people by his love. I have incidentally described the passing away of Madhavendra Puri. Anyone who hears this must be considered very fortunate. Thus, Ramachandra Puri stayed at Jagannath Puri. As we said, he stayed in Jagannath Puri. As is customary for those in the renounced order, he would sometimes stay someplace and then go away. There was no certainty of where Ramachandra Puri would take his meal, for he would do so even uninvited. Nevertheless, he was very particular about keeping account of how others were taking their meals. So Ramachandra Puri, he suddenly came to different houses of devotees. So he was watching who is eating what and how much. To invite Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would cost 320 kaudi, small conch shells. At that time, monies were these small conch shells. 320 kaudis for a good lunch for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This would provide lunch for 3 people, including Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and sometimes Keshava and Govinda. These are two his servants. They helped the Lord Chaitanya. Every day the Lord would take his meal at different place, and if someone was prepared to pay for a meal, the price was fixed at only 4 panas. Another measure of money. Ramachandra Puri concerned himself with gathering all sorts of information about how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was situated. So he wanted to offend Chaitanya Mahaprabhu because he was the main among all devotees. Everyone was worshipped him. So he wanted to find faults in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, including his regulative principles, his lunch, his sleep, and his movements. Because Ramachandra Puri was interested only in finding faults, he could not understand the transcendental qualities of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. His only concern was finding faults, but still he could not find any. At last he found a fault. How can a person in the renounced order eat so many sweetmeats, he said. If one eats sweets, controlling the senses is very difficult. In this way, Ramachandra Puri blasphemed Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu before everyone, but nevertheless he would regularly come to see the Lord every day. When they met, the Lord would offer him respectful obeisances, considering him a god-brother of his spiritual master. Ramachandra Puri's business, however, was to search for faults in the Lord. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu knew that Ramachandra Puri was criticizing him before everyone, but whenever Ramachandra Puri came to see him, the Lord offered him respects with great attention. One day Ramachandra Puri came in the morning to the abode of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Seeing many ants, he said something to criticize the Lord. Last night there was sugar candy here, he said. Therefore, ants are wandering about. Alas, this renounced sannyasi is attached to such senseless gratification. After speaking in this way, he got up and left. So proudly he went away. Really, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was living in a very austere way. He had a small hut, clay hut with a clay floor, and his bed was just a straws on the floor, covered with some cloth. He had no furniture there, and of course there was no food. Lord Chaitanya never ate in his room. He was eating outside, but ants, they were everywhere. And Ramachandra Puri thought that, if there are some ants, he probably enjoyed some sweets here. So he invented this in his mind. This is a very interesting thing, that if a person is proud, he is estimating everything, judging everything, and this pride inclines him to find faults. And when he finds these faults, he feels that, oh, everyone is lower than me, I'm higher than everyone. And this is what Ramachandra Puri did. He found the reason to offend Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and then, feeling victorious, he went away. But it was, of course, full degradation. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had heard rumors about Ramachandra Puri's blasphemy. Now he directly heard these fanciful accusations. Ants generally crawl about here, there, and everywhere, but Ramachandra Puri, imagining faults, criticized Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by alleging that there had been sweetmeats in his room. After hearing this criticism, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was doubtful and apprehensive. Therefore, he called Govinda and instructed him as follows. From today on, it will be ruled that I shall accept only 1/4 of a pot of Lord Jagannatha's prasadam and 5 gandas worth of vegetables. Therefore, the Lord Chaitanya reduced his meal. See what his behavior is. And although Ramachandra Puri openly offended him, but the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu thought that probably the Lord wants me to eat less. Who didn't see the offenses, but he accepted this as a lesson from the Lord, and thought that the Lord wants me to eat less, and therefore he reduced his meal twice, and he gave an instruction to Govinda, his servant, to bring less food. If you bring any more than this, you will not see me here anymore. So I will go away from here. Govinda relayed this message to all the devotees. When they heard it, they felt as if their heads had been struck by thunderbolts. All the devotees condemned Ramachandra Puri, saying, "This sinful man has come here and taken our lives." That day, a Brahmana extended an invitation to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When Govinda accepted only 5 gandas worth of vegetables and 1/4 of a pot of rice, the Brahmana, in great despair, struck his head with his hand and cried, "Alas, alas!" Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ate only half of the rice and vegetables, and whatever remained was taken by Govinda. Thus, both Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Govinda ate only half the food they needed. Because of this, all the other devotees gave up eating. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ordered Govinda and Keshava, "You may both take alms elsewhere to fill your bellies." In this way, some days passed in great unhappiness. Hearing of all this, Ramachandra Puri went to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu offered his obeisance to Ramachandra Puri, worshipping his feet. Then Ramachandra Puri smiled and spoke to the Lord. Ramachandra Puri advised, "It is not the business of a sannyasi to gratify his senses. He should fill his belly some way or other. I have heard that you have cut your eating in half. Indeed, I see that you are skinny. Such dry renunciation is also not really religion of a sannyasi." Now he again started to criticize Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for eating less. So this is the nature of an envious person. He reprimands in one way. At first he thinks that he ate too much, then he reminds him for eating too less. A sannyasi eats as much as necessary to maintain his body, but he doesn't enjoy satisfying his senses materially. And thus a sannyasi becomes perfect in his spiritual advancement in knowledge. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was listening to these words. Lord Krishna said, "My dear Arjuna, one cannot perform mystic yoga if he is more than necessary or needlessly fasts, sleeps and dreams too much, or does not sleep enough. One should eat and enjoy his senses as much as necessary. One should properly endeavor to execute his duties, and one should regulate his sleep and wakefulness. Thus, one can become freed from material pains by executing mystic yoga." this behavior was manifested by Ramachandra Puri. I will probably finish to leave the time for questions. So actually, Ramachandra Puri, he turned out into an envious person who was finding faults in anyone and who was enjoying himself, making others lower. And he gave instruction, and this instruction is from scriptures, but spoken from a proud person. They didn't help anyone. Eventually, he went out of Jagannath Puri, and devotees, they were relieved, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu started to eat again normally, and all the devotees were happy about it. So this is a very important question from Caitanya-caritamrita to all of us, and it teaches us on the example of Ramachandra Puri and Ishvara Puri what is a false and what is false discipleship. And I ask all of you listeners of this marathon of Caitanya-caritamrita to think about it and to try to be in the mood of asking the Lord the qualities and intelligence, to ask the Lord to lead me through this life and to get the knowledge which would change me, and try to find it real teachers who also has these qualities of disciples, not a proud teachers who behave like Ramachandra Puri, but real teachers, and to search real knowledge and learn to trust God in our lives, accepting everything which comes into our life as His mercy, as His lessons, which He sends us to change us. This is a very important quality. If a person has got such sincerity, his life definitely very soon the Lord will send a real spiritual master, sends into the life of such a person. Real knowledge would change us and would help us to manifest spiritual qualities. The Lord arranges the meeting with real teachers, and then a person gets an ability to develop the spiritual qualities and to get the gift of a highest love. This is what this is what our soul wants to achieve. We are searching for this happiness, for this love, and this is possible only on a spiritual level. All the rest will be just anything else would satisfy us. Even if we would have a power, even if we will rule all the universe, anyway we would be unsatisfied, because we are spiritual entities and we are meant for the highest love and for the highest spiritual relationship. So this is a very important lesson. Thank you very much. I will be happy to answer some questions. Please, I'm waiting for questions. Thank you very much for your wonderful absorption into the mood of the disciple. We have several questions. The first is, why 54? Why the Lord Jagannath is fed 54 times, and why so often? What's the root of this tradition? Thank you very much for this question. The Lord Jagannath is a very special expansion of Krishna. Externally he looks unusually. He has a big round eyes and big smile, and his hands are just like they are like cut, they are short. This is a Krishna in the mood of a greatest state of amazement when he sees his devotees, and his arms become shorter and the eyes becomes wider and the smile is growing. This is the mood of separation with his devotees. And the Lord Jagannath is a Krishna in the state of a great separation. And when a person feels a great separation, great pain, then the Lord Jagannath, he eats a lot. In this abode, it is considered that the Lord is mostly eats. This is the mode of separation. The Lord, he is eating and he remembers about his devotees in Vrindavan. And therefore, this Mahaprasadam is considered, so the food, it is considered to be a very, very powerful because it is filled with the love or in separation with his devotees. Because the Lord eats this food in this mood, and it is offered 54 times because it is made during the day, almost without interruption. The food is always offered to the Lord Jagannath several times a day, and this temple is opened 21 or 22 hours a day. Only after midnight it is closed, because Lord Jagannath, he is merciful. He gives his ability to people to see him during the long time. And many preparations are offered there, and it is abode. It is you can spiritually progress in that abode just eating that food, just eating this Mahaprasadam. You can reach a perfection of love to God. It is very powerful, and therefore traditionally it is offered many preparations many times a day, and it is considered that there are four abodes in India. On the north, this is the Lord as a Badrinath. He's in meditation. In the west, in Dwaraka, the Lord, he's ruling. He's a king. On the south, he rests. But on the east, in the Jagannath temple, he eats. This is the abode where the Lord eats, and where his love, his spiritual power is all in food. This is the place, and people come there to taste this food. And there are many interesting stories about how this food, they cured many people from diseases, they awaken spiritual emotions in them. This is a very special Mahaprasadam, and many people, they take this parts of this Mahaprasadam with them, and they add this Mahaprasadam to their food every day. So this is the glory of this place, and therefore traditionally it is cooked everything on fire in clay pots. These traditions of millions of years are still the same, and the preparations are still the same, and they are very tasteful, from the same products. They never invent anything. This tradition is preserved, and it's very interesting to see that. There are so many traditions there, we don't have time to tell about it, but briefly I can answer like that. The second question is, why Prabhupada practically didn't go to Jagannath Puri with his disciples? Because the Lord Chaitanya spent the most time of his life there, and this is a place of his special bliss. Srila Prabhupada, he was in Jagannath Puri with devotees, but not often, because Srila Prabhupada, maybe he didn't have much time. He was developing Mayapur, then Vrindavan, and he was traveling a lot. But once Srila Prabhupada told his devotees that he wants to open big temples in Mayapur, and in Jagannath Puri, and he said that the one who will build a temple in Jagannath Puri would get my special blessings. And once one devotee named Mayapur Chandra Prabhu, this is the disciple of Srila Prabhupada from Italy, he read this in one of the journals. He read this instruction, and he thought that I want to build a temple. And after the departure of Srila Prabhupada, he came to India, And he shared these thoughts with some of the devotees. And he was just a simple pujari in one of Italian temples. And he was also pujari of Jagannatha deities in Italy. And at what point he was invited to the committee of our society, and they said that you wanted to build a temple in Jagannath Puri. He said, yes, I wanted to do it, but I don't know how to do it. And they told that there is a land is donated on the ocean shore in Jagannath Puri, and you can go and try to make it. So he went there, he had his family, and they all came there, and this land was just there was just a plot on the ocean. There was no road, there was no electricity, just jungles. But they started to live there, and he started to preach. He tried to attract some investments, and he said that I need at least $10,000 to build at least a small temple. So he went to Mayapur, he was praying to the Lord Chaitanya for this donation. This is a big sum. And suddenly one Russian devotee comes to him and said, oh, there is one businessman who wants to make a donation. And I heard that you want to build a temple of Jagannath Puri, and so he donated. And he asked how much, and this devotee said $10,000. Jai Jagannath, he said. So he got a donation and built a temple, and there is still such a temple there. There is a farm. There is a temple in the town. Undoubtedly, Jagannath Puri is a place where we need a bigger temple, and now there are some sponsors who can build a bigger temple, but now they are consulting with the local administration, and there is a plan actually to build there a big ISKCON center in Jagannath Puri, and it was the desire of Srila Prabhupada to so that devotees would preach there and attract many people there. Another question is, Ramananda Puri, he was a dry philosopher. How can we relate to such people, and how should we communicate with such people, and how to destroy this inclination into ourselves? Thank you for this important question. Yes, we can meet such people, but we can follow the example of the Lord Chaitanya. He was just, if we argue with such people and try to put them in their place, we actually become on the one level with such people. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu behaved differently. Although these reprimands were unworthy, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he remained disciples, and he accepted this and advice. Devotees told them, why are you listening to him? He's just a critic. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied that actually he gives a good advice. I agree with him that sannyasi shouldn't eat too much, so he accepted this as a lesson. Therefore, if we, in our heart, we still stay disciples, although in the example of Ramachandra Puri, he didn't change. But actually, if devotees are sincerely humble, if they don't argue, we can just gently avoid this communication, and if there is something useful, we can take, and this humility may influence this person. Because if this is a devotee, then devotee has two sides. From one side, he wants to develop spiritual qualities. From the other side, he may have some material conditioning, some material nature. which still rules him, and sometimes he can be proud, and sometimes he can be also humble. And in this way, we can at least we need to protect our spiritual life, not to get in a close relationship, but senior devotees may put this person into his place and to explain him and give some instructions. If there is some senior devotee who can see such behavior, he can help such devotee to help him to understand something. But if this devotee is senior towards us, then we just need to, we shouldn't argue with him, and he wouldn't accept it anyway. And we will just be degrade after this, so we just follow the example of Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Another question is, can it be that the anger of spiritual master be a blessing for a disciple? Yes, Srila Prabhupada, he also manifested anger towards disciples. They were telling the different stages of the anger of Srila Prabhupada, but the anger of a spiritual master is a desire to elevate a disciple. This is an anger towards faults. And devotees, after this anger, they felt blessed and they felt happy. And this is an amazing thing, that usually a person who felt somebody's anger, they felt offended. But when after the anger of a pure devotee, a person feels blessed. A normal, humble devotee towards a teacher, if he is reprimanded by a spiritual master, a person feels that a teacher is not indifferent to me, he takes care of me. So devotee feels that this is the anger not against him as a personality, but against the ignorance which is inside of him. And the actually spiritual teacher elevates him. This is the feeling of a disciple towards the real anger of a spiritual master. And moreover, among disciples, it is said that if a spiritual master reprimands a disciple, it means that he values him, that a disciple is worthwhile, and he is able to tolerate this reprimanding. It means that a spiritual master appreciates such disciple. If a spiritual master sees the disciple is too weak and he won't be able to tolerate this anger, he wouldn't do it. He will be more gentle with him, just not to drive the disciple away. He gives instruction, but in a softer way. But a closer disciples he can reprimand, and this is a sign that the spiritual master he appreciates his disciple as a mature one. Thank you very much. And probably the last question: how to get through difficult situation in relationship, being in a position of a disciple when the situation gets you imbalanced? There are some situations after which you get disappointed that you couldn't overcome them, and usually the situations they repeat. This is a very important question. When the situation happens and all the feelings come to us which can drive us away, we want to shout or we want to run away and to feel offended, it means that that our feelings overcame. In that moment, we shouldn't. We have to try to watch these feelings inside of us. We must understand that these feelings is not me. This is not me. This is just something. This is a lesson. If I feel this, that this is just a lesson in here, and we should try to transform ourselves into the consciousness of a disciple. Sometimes we need to step back a little bit not to make decisions at once, not to be involved at once. A little bit we have to get ourselves together, maybe to wash ourselves, to clean ourselves, to have a walk, if there is such a possibility and opportunity. If not, anyway, we have to remember that I am a servant, I'm a disciple. Stop. These feelings are not me, I'm just watching them. So transform ourselves into a watchful position, just not to be identified with these feelings. And we should try to meditate on the lesson which is in this situation, and then we will be able to come to this understanding, and the Lord will give this revelation what's the lesson is here, and after that you feel much better. And I feel, and then I know what to do. But for that we need some experience. If we pray to God and meditate on this, gradually we'll be able to overcome the situation. There are no situations which we cannot overcome. If it is sent to us, then we can overcome that. But if we surrender to Krishna, if we get into this humble position, oh my Lord, I surrender to you, please give me intelligence, make me dance as you like. And then the devotee gets the power from the Lord and support to come through the situation in the right way. Thank you very much. I'm thankful for your attention and for your questions. Please keep this lesson and meditate on it, and maybe write it down and try to apply it into your life. And undoubtedly this will give all blessings into your life. I wish you all the good.